You get a slop badge, and you get a slop badge, and you get a slop. Wait, what? Since when was Freerin considered slop? But that's the point. Ask 10 people what slop actually means, and you'll get 10 different answers. So let's fix that. Because to understand what makes an anime slop, you have to first define what slop is and what the difference is from other terms, and at the end, I'll even show you a roadmap of how to instantly tell if an anime is slop. So let's first define the different terms. A mid-anime is when a show failed to stand out, and it could be for a lot of reasons. The animation could be fine, the characters could be fine, the plot could make sense, but it could fail to stand out, and maybe that's why it's mid. Or maybe the pacing is off, the characters make no sense, and maybe the ending just fell apart. Maybe the show took a swing and missed. Regardless, mid isn't an offensive term. Mid is just something that you'll forget by the next season, or maybe even the next day. But a slop anime is a whole different ballpark entirely. In fact, I wouldn't even say that the anime was really written, so much as it was assembled, like you're printing tropes and scenarios like you're in a factory. It's not that the writers tried and failed, it's that they followed a trope or template that literally guarantees mediocrity, and most of the time, it's low effort, mass produced, or highly repetitive tropes that feels just churned out like a factory, and I want to be clear about this. Slop isn't just about tropes. Every genre has tropes. Battle Shonen has a tournament arc, for example. Romance have a will they won't they scenario or trope. Isekai has a lot of tropes, but tropes are just tools. A bad writer uses those tropes as a crutch, while a good writer uses them as a starting point and actually builds something on top of it. That's the difference between a mid and a slop anime. A mid anime at least tries to do something. A slop anime just follows the same repetitive patterns. Well, let's use Isekai as an example, primarily because it's one of the most slop-heavy genres to ever exist. Which is a massive shame, because really, Isekai as a genre should be one of the least slop-heavy types out there. I mean, just think about it for 1 second. The main character isn't on Earth anymore, meaning that you don't have to follow Earth rules and Earth logic. They're quite literally transported to another world, and that other world could literally have anything and everything. It's a completely blank slate. But instead, we've got the predictable discriminations of other races like beast folk, or have elves in the story. Because why not? And on the topic of elves, elves are some of the most common isekai races in existence, and I absolutely hate it. It follows the same slop formula of, oh, elves are now slaves to humans and we gotta save them. It is one of the most annoying tropes I have ever seen. But what are some other tropes that make an isekai slop? Well, I absolutely hate the harem aspect of isekai. I do not understand. Every harem has the exact same formula. The female love interest just loves our main character for no reason, or just because he saved her once. And then they go from having some personality at the very least, to just being completely one note, and their only character personality trait is now just, I love the main character and I just want to support him all the time. And another trend that you see with slop isekai is the Adventurers Guild. There's always the Adventurers Guild where the receptionist has a 5-minute breakdown of how the adventurer's rank goes from like F to S, and the protagonist immediately breaks that power system within like 5 episodes because they're too overpowered anyway. Everything about it just screams low quality and slop. And don't get me started on the video game interface UI. If you see a video game UI in your isekai anime, 8 times out of 10, it is almost a guarantee that it will be slop. Because it's such a low effort shortcut that prioritizes short-term exposition dumps instead of actual world building, and power fantasy explorations. And it's the same for dungeons. 9 times out of 10, dungeons will just be a copy-paste formula that sometimes make no sense. There's always dedicated floors with a boss and a high-level floor. It adds zero lore to the actual world and instead just prioritizes solely on the video game-esque aspect of the dungeon. No, seriously, why is there human architecture in the actual dungeon? That makes no sense. And it's always the quote-unquote unexplored dungeons that have that, and I just crack up laughing every time. They borrow the tropes without actually doing anything useful or transforming it into their own work. Because instead of elves, why not have octopus-like hybrids that can walk on land? Okay, on second thought, that one might not be a good idea, but you get the point. Why not have dungeons that are actually in the air instead of all the way down in the ground? Those would be transforming the original tropes into something unique. And that's how some of the best isekai animes function. Take an isekai like ReZero, for example. ReZero has the typical isekai setup. He's transported to another world. The world has elves, it has maids, and it even has the stereotypical Subaru is one of the most overpowered in his world. With the sole exception of Reinhardt, of course. But the difference with ReZero compared to every other Slop anime is that ReZero simply uses those tropes as a stepping stone. It uses it as a building block instead of relying on the trope itself. Amelia is indeed half elf, and while yes, she is discriminated, it's not because of her elf ears, it's because of her white hair that goes alongside those elf ears. And the answer is very justifiable. It's because the Witch of Envy, Satella, had those exact same features. So of course, everyone will be completely scared of them. It's not just, oh, I see elf? Elf race bad. I want to discriminate against elves. Amelia has a unique personality outside from just being an elf that is discriminated against, or just simply being the main character's woman with no personality. In fact, even if Subaru just simply didn't exist in the story for a while, Amelia could pick up the main character mantle because she's so well written. And that's how you build upon a fundamental elf trope into being something unique and transformative. Slop isn't about which tropes you use, it's about whether the tropes itself is driving the narrative instead of the other way around. And the isekai genre isn't the only offender. In fact, I would actually say that the romance genre is even worse, because you've got the male protagonist who's pretty bland and self-insertable, and most likely than not sits in the back corner of the classroom. He's nice, and then that's it. Yeah, that's his entire personality right there. And then you've got the female lead or the female interest, and they're most likely the most popular girl in the school, and their only personality trait is, I wish I wasn't this popular and I just want to be normal. It's the same repetitive story 20 times, but with different character names and different art styles. And you'll be lucky if the main character has even one trait or hobby. And then you've got the cultural festival trope, where in most cases than not, nothing will actually happen. And while some slop anime might actually convince you that there are stakes and that there are character development going on during the cultural festival, it's mostly because they bring up artificial stakes in the first place during that specific cultural festival trope, in which case, you're not really doing anything new. But the real question is why anime is slop to begin with, and trust me, the answer is very interesting. But that's for another video. So, if you want to learn more or just enjoying my content so far, consider subscribing. And another trope that you'll see very often is the beach episode, which is a masterpiece of slop engineering all by itself. Because you'll know what's gonna happen. There's gonna be a girl in a swimsuit, and then the guy's gonna go super awkward and spend the next 10 minutes cringing over and saying, oh my god, this feels wrong, or something of that sort. Zero plot development, zero character development, It exists simply like a check mark that the author can tick off just because they want to speedrun how many slop tropes they want to put in their anime. Because in a well-written show, the beach episode could be something a lot more. It could be because the characters need a break, but then something very important happens, maybe a conversation or a realization that shifts the entire dynamic between the two characters that are supposed to get together. But instead, in the slop version, you've got the beach episode simply because the trope demands it. And the other trope that infuriates me is the miscommunication trope that always happens. Some characters get a miscommunication, and then the two characters that are supposed to get together have their entire dynamic halted for more than like 3 episodes, simply because the author couldn't find another conflict. And if there isn't a miscommunication trope, you can bet there'll be a love triangle that comes out of nowhere. But like with Isekai, you can of course write a good romance anime that is completely unique and creative. Something that doesn't rely on those slop tropes, but just simply use it as a stepping stone for character development and actual narrative plot. And the best example that I can come up with off the top of my head right now is the Rascal Cannot Dream Of series, specifically episode 13. In that episode, Sakuta is completely depressed and is cheered up by Shoko Makinohara, and when Mai finds out about this from a letter, which is a miscommunication, she leaves. But instead of most slop anime just using it as a point of conflict for the next few episodes, Sakuta immediately clears it up with Mai in the very same episode, and the trope is just simply there as a background to further encapsulate Sakuta's mental breakdown while further developing their dynamic. And at this point, I think it's pretty clear that it's not the genres themselves that makes an anime slop. It's not even whether or not an anime is mainstream or not that makes an anime slop. It's if the authors themselves choose to build upon the trope foundation or substitute the plot and character writing for the tropes. So how can you recognize a slop anime? And is it even possible to recognize a slop anime at just the first glance? My friend pointed out something very interesting, and they said that if there's a guy alone on the cover and there's 3 or more girls on there, it's probably slop. And now I can't unsee it. And obviously, that doesn't mean that every anime or cover that has that is slop. But I'm just simply pointing out that it's probably safe to assume that more times than not, it will actually probably be slop. And on that note, the title itself, if the title is like a full-on sentence, we're entering dangerous slop territory. I mean, reborn as a vending machine, I now wander the dungeon? I didn't make that up, that's a real show. And yes, more often than not, the author probably knows what they're doing with that title, but you get the point, right? Except for Reincarnated as a Slime. That one's actually good. But one of my most favorite ways to tell if an anime is slop or not are the character designs. You can immediately tell it's a slop anime, especially in Isekai if the main character looks like a Kirito knockoff. And again, just in case people didn't get it the first 2 times, I am not saying that every single time those will be slop, but probably 9 times out of 10 it will be. Let's be honest, come on. But this is all just from a first glance. So how can you tell if an anime is slop while watching the show? Well, does the anime just simply use tropes or insert a scenario for no reason? Does it follow the traditional tropes without changing anything? Like at all? Does it feel like the slop checklist made the decisions for the characters? If the answer is yes, then yes, you are definitely watching a slop anime. But slop isn't bad. There's a reason why people like slop to begin with. But what if it feels like the slop is just taking over the anime industry as a whole? What can you do? The best thing you can do as a viewer is very simple. Reward the shows that break the mold. Watch ReZero. Watch Frieren. Because otherwise, you're gonna get another copy of guy gets hit by a truck and becomes overpowered in a fantasy world with a status screen and an elf girl who has no personality. Anyway, that's it from me. Remember to subscribe. Ronin out.